We begin by seeing a news report that talks about the hunt for the leader of a group known as the Death Cult, known as the Reaper, who, despite many police looking for him, is still at large, and because of this, his evils thrive in society. The cult's victims are cruel criminals, gang members, murderers, and other types of people who commit despicable sins. The leader was once incarcerated and sentenced to death. However, it is revealed that during his death sentence in the electric chair, the criminal liberated himself in a surprising way after a failure in the electrical process and then escaped from prison, killing many. It is reported that even civil servants fell victim to the Reaper after revelations of corruption among them. The scene shifts, and we see the human creature Reaper in his hideout, covered in dark clothing and broken electric cables, as if he were an electrified mutant abomination. There is an energy that travels through his body as he sharpens his blades and tools. A few weeks later, we meet Natalie, a young woman. She had called her mother to let her know she is heading to California, but reassures the woman that she will be careful of strangers. Natalie is walking down the road, waiting for a ride from someone trustworthy. Minutes after a tiring walk, a vehicle stops, and a well-dressed man offers her a ride. The man, named Bill, believes his day will be amazing as the woman is very beautiful and might offer him something more. Natalie, already aware of evil men, warns him to be a good guy, so she won't bring him problems. Bill changes his demeanor to a nice guy, but he is drinking, which doesn't concern Natalie much, as she really wants to reach her destination. After they leave, heading west, they chat a bit, get to know each other, and even smile a little at Bill's jokes. However, Natalie does not give her real name. He almost drives the car off the road, and Natalie offers to drive, but Bill says he's fine. The scene changes, and we see a stranger carrying a lifeless woman wrapped in plastic somewhere. He then places her in a compartment and washes his hands. On the road, Bill realizes that his vehicle is heating up quickly, so he wants to stop. They stop in a town to wait for the car to return to normal. Seeing that a hotel is nearby, Bill invites Natalie to end the day and spend the night there, and who knows, maybe have some fun. She initially declines, but being confronted about having little money and nowhere to go, she accepts the man's invitation. The two arrive at the Last Chance Hotel and enter the place, where they are greeted by Kane, who asks if they are a couple. They affirm that they are. The receptionist calmly states that he cleans the rooms every day during all the years he has worked there. After handing over the key to room 7, he watches the two go up the stairs and curses them with curses for the possible sinful acts they will commit. The two enter the room, and when Bill wants to get what he wants, Natalie asks to drink something first. Suddenly, the lamps go out, and this gives Natalie the opportunity to dose Bill's drink with a sedative. Bill fixes the lamps and does not notice a drawing of an eye inside a triangle above them. This refers to the being that sees all. The two then drink their drinks and then begin a romantic moment, with Natalie buying time until the sedative takes effect on Bill. They do not realize it, but they are being watched by a hidden camera. Seeing that the sedative is taking effect, Natalie initiates her plan. She asks Bill to sit in the chair, and thinking it is just a moment of love, Bill agrees to be tied up with his belt. He is drunk and sleepy, and realizes too late that Natalie is a thief and only lured him there to steal his money and car. After completing her plan, Natalie leaves the room and leaves the man alone there. Minutes later, we see the Reaper in motion, carrying his death weapon, and surprisingly, Kane walking down the hotel hallway, carrying plastic in his hands. It doesn't take long, and the reaping creature enters Bill's room and finishes him off mercilessly. Kane, facing the room, recites a prayer and then leaves the place, where the Reaper carries out his cruel actions. Sometime later, Natalie is in another part of the town and stops the car to talk to her mother. At this moment, it is revealed that Natalie is looking for money to pay for her mother's surgery, which has a very expensive treatment. In the news, we see the face of what seems to be the Reaper, and with new investigations, it seems that the criminal is in Kings County. The authorities arrived at this information due to the disappearance of a woman who works by using her body. Natalie then enters the restaurant to eat something. She is served by Helen, who asks her to wait a little because she is first serving the restaurant's authority table. At the table, a settlement is occurring, with a lot of money involved. The leader and owner of the restaurant, Hobby, asks his negotiator, named Brad, to buy more of the illegal material. Confidently, Brad says he will manage it. After the negotiation, Hobby leaves and leaves the member Brad behind. Brad is a womanizer and ends up leaving a generous tip for Helen, which attracts Natalie's attention. She, finding a new opportunity to earn easy money, approaches the counter to pay her meal and takes advantage of the moment to attract Brad's gaze using her body. The man is captivated. After leaving the restaurant, he finds a flat tire on his vehicle, and for Helen, this is a golden opportunity. She steps out and offers to give the man a ride. Brad, without hesitation, accepts. Driving through the city, they chat a bit, and then Brad asks her to drop him off at a location. However, the young woman, wanting to put her plan into action, offers herself to the boy and asks him to buy a drink for them. Brad, dazzled by the young woman's beauty, gets out of the car and enters the store, leaving his bag in the vehicle. Quickly, Natalie opens the bag and finds money, a gun, and duct tape. Without thinking twice, she robs the man and leaves him behind. She then drives back down the road, but a few kilometers later, the car breaks down, forcing the young woman to continue walking on foot. Night approaches, and by luck, a car stops, and the driver offers her a ride. The older man is named Jack. However, he is heading to the previous town, which worries Natalie. But with no options and not wanting to spend the night alone on the road in the cold, she accepts the ride, believing Jack is a nice guy and seems to care about her. Along the way, the two talk, and Jack says he is going to meet someone in the town ahead, so he will stop. On the way, listening to the radio, the news informs that many bodies have been found, and the authorities urge people to stay indoors for safety. When they arrive in town, Jack asks them to stop for a while and rest because he has been driving for a long time. Coincidentally, it's the same hotel as before. Natalie wants to stay in the car, but Jack warns the young woman that staying there is dangerous, unaware that something terrible has happened inside the hotel. Inside the Last Chance Hotel, Kane finishes wrapping the deceased Bill's body when he notices the arrival of new visitors. He descends and welcomes the two, implying that he knows Natalie. Jack cuts the man's speech short and asks for 2 rooms nearby. The local radio informs that for any news about the Reaper criminal, call the authorities. Kane does not care about this, as he considers himself just, and warns that the Reaper only seeks the impure and sinners. Kane asks the couple to pray before sleeping. The available rooms are 8 and 9. While Natalie enters her room, Jack goes down to park his car. The young woman, tired, sits on the bed and suddenly notices that the wardrobe mirror has moved. The visitors do not know, but the entire place is monitored by cameras. Natalie checks her new acquisitions, while Jack does the same, having a large blade and illegal items in his backpack. Minutes later, Natalie prepares to take her shower. When looking in the mirror, she sees someone strange looking at her. When she turns around, she sees no one, but fearing someone is there, she grabs the gun to check. Looking down the hallway, she sees only sparks of energy hovering in the air. Startled, she calls Jack. He grabs his machete and goes out to check the hallway with Natalie, but no one is seen. The two then stay in room 9 and talk about their lives for a few minutes. After calming down, Natalie goes back to her room. Jack leaves the door open in case she needs anything. Later at night, Natalie sleeps peacefully when her phone rings. When she answers, no one says anything. She ends up overhearing Jack talking to someone else, and when she looks through the crack in the door, she sees Brad, the man who buys the illegal things from Jack. Brad says he was cheated and robbed by a woman who seduced him. Fearing he is being watched by someone, Jack closes the door and tells Brad to settle the payment with him by morning. After that, he leaves. Later, in the early morning, Natalie enters Jack's room to grab something from her bag, but he is sleeping on top of it. Cautiously, she opens the zipper and takes the car key. When she goes downstairs, Kane still offers his services, but Natalie declines. She calls for a taxi, and the man quickly calls to order one. He says it will arrive in half an hour. Then she cautiously goes to Jack's car and takes the many illegal pills and puts them in her bag. Meanwhile, on another floor of the hotel, Brad calls Hobby and tells him what happened. When the lights flicker and go out, suddenly, the Reaper creature emerges from the darkness and surprisingly disappears in the blink of an eye, cutting the phone call. Irritated, Hobby tells his henchman to go to the hotel and finish off Brad. Back to Natalie, she disconnects something from Jack's vehicle and steps away to leave. When checking her backpack, she discovers that she left the letter for her mother on the nightstand in the room, something too important for her to leave behind. She hides the backpack and returns to the room, but without realizing it, she is seen by Brad, who is very happy to see her. Just before she enters the room, Brad surprises her and grabs her. Suddenly, electric particles begin to emerge, and the noise distracts the man. Natalie breaks free and threatens him with her gun. They enter Jack's room, which leaves Jack confused by the situation. But soon Brad unmasks the young Natalie. However, Natalie is not intimidated by either of them and quickly ties both of them with duct tape. As she hears a knock on the door, she thinks it's Kane calling her for the taxi, but there's no one there. Then she hears a car arriving and believes it's her ride to escape, so she says goodbye and leaves the room. As she walks down the hallway, she hears someone coming up and carrying a weapon. Scared, she runs and seeks shelter in a random room. Coincidentally, it's room 7, and as she hides behind the bed, she finds Bill's body wrapped in plastic. This leaves her shocked and fearful of what might happen next to her. Back in the hallway, Hobby's henchmen knock on the door of the room when energy cores surge nearby, and at last, the Reaper, who is an incomprehensible creature, appears before them. The two fear the creature and shoot, but the Reaper disappears before their eyes, as if teleporting to another dimension. Taking advantage of the men's distraction, Natalie leaves the room and runs. The henchmen hear something and head in the opposite direction down the hallway. The lights flicker rapidly again, and at one of the doors, the Reaper appears and pulls one of them inside a room. His companion calls for him, but receives no response. Suddenly, the electrified creature emerges behind him and kills him too. Meanwhile, Natalie, hearing the man's screams, dials emergency and calls for support at the hotel. Suddenly, the man's body plummets from above, scaring her. Hiding beneath the counter was Kane. He grabs her and says that he was tempted by her body and forcibly pushes her against the floor to want to sin against her before their deaths. Natalie tries to wriggle out of the attack but cannot. The man will start his indecent touches, but fortunately for Natalie, the Reaper creature appears in front of them and mercilessly electrocutes the sinful man to his death. The young woman, in panic, returns to the room where Jack and Brad are imprisoned and says that the Reaper killer is there. The lights flicker again, and knocks echo through the environment. When Natalie opens the door, she finds a bag. She quickly picks it up and upon opening it, discovers the receptionist's cap. This leaves the trio worried, and with no choices, Natalie frees both of them. Brad, not satisfied, throws the woman on the bed and presses her to tell where the money and illegal things are. Jack interrupts the threats with his machete, but suddenly, a police officer enters the room and holds the two men at gunpoint. Minutes later, we see the trio being interrogated by the law enforcement agent, but soon discover that the man is corrupt and quickly stows the illegal pills in his pocket. Natalie says there is a killer inside the hotel, which the police officer in his mind does not believe. He laughs at the situation of the three, but decides to check with them. Upon arriving in the kitchen, the lights are off, and in one of the rooms, behind the door, sparks of electricity surge rapidly. The armed officer leaves the trio inside the pantry and goes out to check the area. He walks down the hallway until he finds a body lying on the floor at the entrance to a room. He continues searching the floor and does not understand the scribbles of names and symbols on the walls. Electric sparks emerge in the hallway, and the man shoots, but nothing happens. Thinking it is an ordinary man, the officer continues the search, but what he will find will be disastrous for his life. The man continues searching and comes across the lifeless body of Kane. In the pantry, Natalie manages to free herself from the cuffs with an improvised key. Brad asks her to free him, which Natalie thinks twice about. However, Jack tells the young woman she will need their help. Reconsidering, she decides to free the two. The officer at this moment is returning to take them away, but the Reaper reappears behind him. Then, the shots are heard by the trio. Natalie drops the key, and as she tries to pick it up, she notices blood dripping on the floor. Fortunately, she manages to free the two, and they leave the place, leaving the officer a victim of the creature. The group returns to the room and reflects on the situation they are in. They think about leaving and talk about Jack's truck, but Natalie confesses that the vehicle is not functioning. Jack asks Brad to retrieve what he owes him along with Natalie while he goes to fix and bring the truck. Minutes later, Jack repairs the car and enters slowly. As soon as he is in the seat, the creature appears outside. As previously described, it holds electric cables that emanate electricity, wears a black hood, and its eye gleams with the light of death. Jack, frightened, gets out of the car, but the Reaper disappears before he can take any action to attack. Natalie and Brad go to the place where she left the money and the pills, but they are no longer there. She says she will go up again, believing they are in their room. Meanwhile, Hobby, having no answers from his henchmen, decides to do the job himself and is there at the hotel. Soon he finds Brad rummaging through the debris in the alley. It is revealed that he already has the bag containing what belonged to Brad. Hobby orders the man to kneel to finish him off. Just before the worst happens, Natalie throws a fire extinguisher at Hobby's head and knocks him down. However, this is not enough, and the man rises to press the young woman against the wall with his gun. Fortunately, Brad returns the favor and finishes off his former boss with his own blade. In Jack's car, the creature appears behind him and approaches with its electrifying force. But upon touching the water on the ground, the creature paralyzes and vanishes. Not understanding what he just saw, Jack starts the car and goes to find the others. Unfortunately, before entering, Brad shoots Jack in the chest and forces Natalie out of the vehicle. Out of appreciation for her having saved his life, he considers the debt between them settled and does not finish her off. Just before he gets in the car, the Reaper appears behind him and kills him mercilessly. Desperately, Natalie runs for her life, but the killer closely pursues her and soon captures her. The scene changes, and it is morning, inside what appears to be a church. Inside the place, Natalie is tied to an electrified chair, chained with chains, and facing several dead people, with no eyes, sitting in the pews. The reaping creature then enters the sanctuary and wakes Natalie. He condemns her for her impurity and begins the sacrifice. Natalie receives an electric collar and will be electrocuted, just as the others were. Fortunately, before the worst happens, Jack, who is still alive, surprises the Reaper and pushes him headfirst into a gallon of water. This fatally electrocutes him, as the creature is only a modified man and can be killed. It does not take long for Jack to determine the end for the Reaper creature. He then frees Natalie, and due to his injury, he sits in the pew to rest. However, unfortunately, Jack offers his truck to the young woman to continue her path alone and start over, and then he collapses to his death. The young woman bids farewell to her deceased friend and leaves him there, in the place where they put an end to the mutant madman who almost killed them. Afterwards, she enters the truck and sets off to meet her mother.